All right, here in the workshop today we've got this beautiful Ingraham mantel clock. Looks a lot like a Seth Thomas, but this actually isn't Seth Thomas. This is a Ingraham. You can see it there on the dial. But this will be my first time trying to film a restoration of one of these clocks, so bear with me. Probably won't be very good. All right, to start with this, get the hands off. This one has a nut to hold them on, so it's probably not as old as some others. I'm going to use this cloth here to protect that nut so I don't scratch it up. See if I can even get it off. My goodness. It's on there pretty tight. Now, a different pair of pliers here. Wide jaws. Let's see. Nope, still don't got it. Wow, this thing is tight. Oh my word. I'm gonna try it without so I can see what I'm doing. There it goes. My goodness. Probably hadn't come off in years. Okay, well, use Tupperware. Drop everything here. Alright. That's all on the dial we need off. Get a look at the movement. You can see how bent this this back door is. It must have been somewhere humid. Well, it really must have been somewhere humid. You can see the rust on that bell there. Those are usually a shiny finish. So we'll continue along. Get this movement out of the case. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Pretty typical. Looks like it just has a few flathead screws there. Let's see if this is the right size of screwdriver. Yeah. All right. Got the case out of the way, got the movement out of the case. Just going to inspect this a little bit. In fact, I'm going to take the, well, I suppose I won't do it right now. That'll have to come off. What I will do, though, is I will take the, oh, what have I done? Okay. Take the suspension spring out so it doesn't get all beat up. Should just slide right out. Maybe. This particular movement has a little wheel that sticks through the plates and actually raises this suspension spring up. That's how you set the time. The pendulum doesn't actually have a regulating nut on it like these usually do. How's that in there? Oh, that might be a problem. Looks like this was set into this plate. The suspension spring was set into this plate that rises up and down with this wheel here. Looks like it's been crimped a little bit. So we'll see what I can do to get that out of there without hurting anything. Oh. Maybe what I can do is just take that whole unit out as a whole. Looks like there's a screw here. That's probably what I'll do. your screw here. Oh man, everything is so tight on this clock. There it comes. Oops, there's that screw. Oh, come on. Gotta kind of whip it around, get it off of the crutch there. There it comes. All right. So this is interesting. These types of regulation on these clocks is fairly typical, where you actually regulate it without actually moving the pendulum. But this one's interesting though, because it just has a little thumb wheel where you spin it from, and that'll actually raise and lower the suspension spring. Usually what it is there's a post on there, much like the winding posts that extend through the clocks, and then that's where you get your double end key from. One end is to set the time and the other is to wind the clock, but that one's interesting. You don't need the key for it. Must be a newer model. I'll set that aside for now. Okay, now thing to do, I'm just looking it over real quick before we do anything else. The mainsprings are very greasy. Obviously the whole entire thing is just very dirty. It'll need a thorough cleaning, but probably will need a few bushings as well. But anyway, what we need to do next is need to capture these mainsprings. So we will wind these up. Actually, let me use the key to wind them up. We'll wind up these mainsprings and use these capture clamps to make sure they don't go flying and pinging off or anything like that. Wind up the strike side as well. The mainsprings feel, just slipped there, you can see it's all very dirty, but the chime is actually running, as you can see. We'll just let that run its cycle. There it goes. Alright, yeah, the mainsprings are really greasy, really dirty. So we'll put these capture rings on them. Just kind of maneuver them around so that they, oh my word, nothing's wanting to work. There we go. So they capture that mainspring then. Now we will let it down using this tool and a screwdriver. I don't like resting the clock on that hammer, but oh, you know what I can do is this. There we go. That's better. Not the best. The bell's in our way, but oh well. So we'll just try. Oh, this won't work. We will wind this slightly, disengage the click. Now, you got to be real careful with these. The mainsprings hold power that runs the clock for a whole week. That's a lot of power on those. If you're not careful, you might hurt yourself, might bend some teeth on the clock. God, that grease from the mainsprings got on my hand, making it kind of hard to grip things. We'll keep trying. Alright, finally got those mainsprings captured. It was a booger. The strike side wasn't so bad. The click was in a fairly easy spot to get to. It was just right there, but this one was in about the worst spot that it could have been. Its click is right underneath this plate, so I had to reach in through this side. Eventually had to just put it in my lap, use my legs as leverage, but we got it. So now the next step is to remove this crutch. Yeah, there's a bit of rust. There's a little bit of wear on it, a little bit of a shiny spot, but it really isn't that bad. But there is some solder on here, which means that this has been worked on previously. Really, there shouldn't be solder in very many places. This definitely isn't one of them. Or, you know, I suppose it's one of the acceptable places, I guess, for solder to be, but really what it should be is this wire that runs through here, the crutch should run up into that, and it should be peened there, not soldered, but looks like it used to be peened, so it probably got loose. Somebody was just sick of it and just soldered it, but it's not the worst solder job I've seen, so I'll probably just leave it on there. Now what we need to do is take this movement apart. We'll flip it over. Oh, I just now noticed. Oh, okay. Well, this bell is just screwed into the plate like that. No problem. Let's see. Okay, and then there are a couple of nuts here. Use my wide jaws again. These nuts just need to be taken off. There's only 4 of them that hold the whole. Oh my word, everything on this movement is incredibly tight. It might be the fact that there's just so much rust on everything. All of the steel pieces have a fairly thick coating of rust on there that we'll need to get rid of, but anyway, we'll keep trying to take these off. Okay. I'm going to use a crescent wrench just so we don't keep scratching everything up. There we go. Much better. There's one. Two. Oh, that one was loose. Interesting. 3 and 4. Oh, seems like there was some dirt caked on that one, keeping it from coming off, but it came off. Now, let's see. We'll probably want to remove this spring from the this is the bell engages at the half hour. Take off that spring. Looks like that might be the only one we can get to for now. That's interesting. But anyway, flip this over, take these plates off. So there is a center one, didn't even see that. There's 5 nuts on this movement then. It is tight. There it comes. There we go. Now these should come apart. Just like so. Okay, with the plates apart, you can really see all the wheels here. The movement can be looked at. You can cut it in half. This side over here is the time side. It controls the hands and keeps the time. The other side, this side, is the strike. So it keeps track of how many hours have passed and makes the clock strike the correct amount of hours every hour. So we'll just pull these out. we've got our great wheels. It looks like the fourth wheel just fell out from the time side, but kind of tricky to do with one hand. I'm trying to film top down. Great wheel, you can see all the grease. Shouldn't be like that, should be fairly clean. Second wheel, third wheel, fourth, and then the escapement. Usually comes out the front. And then we have, this is part of the Motion Works. Yeah, so this is definitely a newer movement. Hard to date, probably 30s, probably isn't 40s, but it has, I suppose they did start bluing the Motion Work wheel during the 20s, but anyway. And then we've got our hammer, got the great wheel, our spring wheel, main wheel. On the strike side, you can see all the grease in it. And we have second wheel, third wheel, there's the warning pin. Fourth wheel, this will, oh, there goes our lever. Fourth wheel actually advances the count wheel with these two pins that come up out of here. They're actually, oh, they're not. That's interesting. Normally these pins that come up out of this little brass disc here are just extensions of the, this is called a lantern pinion, but interestingly enough, they're not. Looks like they're just drilled and put in there. So that's interesting. The rest of the Motion Works. Got our governor, the fan. This will slow down the strike and also helps when the clock stops chiming so it doesn't break any teeth off or whatnot. This is our lever that engages with this, and lifting lever. That's pretty much it. This count wheel also comes off with just this spring here. There it is. I'll just lift it up out of there, pull it out, that'll come off. So yeah, this movement is quite dirty, quite a bit of rust on it. That's just the, okay. Might as well just get that out of the way. Stick that back on the post. Quite dirty, lots of rust, lots of staining. Interesting stain pattern. Almost looks like there was lacquer on this at one point. And the places where it's stained is where the lacquer might have come off, but generally these weren't lacquered. That might just be grease. Anyway, so now we'll get it all cleaned up and start to look for wear in the bushings. I realized I made a mistake. I called this wheel the third wheel. This actually isn't the third wheel. This is the fourth wheel. The fourth wheel has the warning pin on it. This is the third wheel. This is the one that lifts the lever, stops the strike at the end of the cycle, and also advances the count wheel. And I realized I didn't finish my thought. This is called a lantern pinion. These wires that run through here between these two pieces of brass are called trundles. Generally, or at least from what I've seen, which isn't much, but usually these are just extensions. These little pins here that actually run the count wheel are just extensions of the trundles, but they're actually not on this one. They just have their own little holes where they live. So that's interesting. Haven't seen it like that, but then again, I haven't seen all of it. Also, what's going on there? That's interesting. The arbor has a different thickness right there. I wonder why that is. All right. Actually, before we can check for wear, we need to let down these mainsprings. We'll do that with this mainspring winder here. Here's the strike side. Take this out, flip it. This is a very specialized tool for clock making. You can make without it, but as I said before, the mainsprings are pretty scary. There's a lot of power on them, like I said, so it definitely helps to have this. Wind it up. You can see how much that was skipping and making all sorts of scary noises. So now it means it's dirty, but now we'll reverse this and just slowly let it down, just like that. Okay, there's our spring all let down, nice and safe. We'll get the other one now. We'll do the same thing. Load it in. Tighten this down. Line it up. There that goes. That was kind of odd. Just looking at these wheels, just from here I can tell they're pretty bent. I'm not sure why, what happened to those, but maybe you can see this on the camera as this unwinds, but you can see there's a pretty obvious bend in that right there. That taken care of. That's one of the problems with these stamped wheels. They basically just get plate brass and stamp out the shape of the wheel, and then that's your wheel, just made out of a piece of sheet brass, so that they're not as strong as, say, a cast or a cut wheel, but they're cheap. Of course, that's what everybody wanted. So that's how they are. We'll try and get these off of here. There's usually a little hook on the arbor. Sometimes you can get lucky. You can just twist it the other way till the hook actually leaves the hole in the spring, but it doesn't seem like I'm so lucky, so we'll just pry it off with a screwdriver. There it is. Come on. Some of these arbors have a little piece of steel cut out and then just shaped into the hook, so it's actually a part of the arbor. Some of them just have a piece of steel that's riveted in place that just protrudes out. Those are harder to pull out, because with the actual cut ones, you can just twist the wheel back and it'll be enough to pull the wheel off when it leaves that hole. But with these ones, and I'm guessing this is probably the other version, where they rivet a little piece of steel in the arbor. my goodness. This does not want to come off. Okay, finally got it off. You can see it is what I thought it was. It has that little piece of riveted outcropping there. Just grabs onto the inside of the spring. The spring has a little hole. I don't know how well you can see that in the camera, but it's got a little hole it grabs into. I'm sure there's a trick to it, but I certainly don't know it. And you can see just how bent that wheel is. That's pretty bad. Don't know what happened to it, but we'll get that straightened out. I believe this is the time wheel, time spring. Now we'll get the chime sight off. I'll see if I can try and record it. Again, I resorted to putting it all on my lap, so I need to stop using my lap as a tool if I'm going to keep recording. Let's see if I can get this one off. I think the trick is to just go underneath the coil. Oh, it's so close. There it comes. It's much easier. You can see, just how dirty that is. This wheel looks to be flat, that's good. But you can see all the grease, old oil just caked on there. And actually you can see inside the coils, you can see those chunks of dried up grease. That's why it's important to not do that, to not over oil, not over grease, because it ends up just thickening, causing problems, stopping the clock. Oh my goodness, you can see all that gunk that just from me prying that out of there. That's what makes your mainsprings slip, like you saw in the mainspring winder. All right, before we get these in the ultrasonic, I just want to, you can see all that grease on there. I'm just going to wipe that off real quick, just before we put it in the ultrasonic, just so that it doesn't clog up my fluid. The fluid is rather expensive, but I need to replace it here soon anyway, but I really don't want any of this in there. You can see how thick that is. That is just nuts. I'm not sure what grease was originally on there, but they definitely used too much of it. So we'll just clean these up a bit. Obviously the plates are bad, the wheels, the main wheels are bad, but I don't think anything else is quite as bad as these are, so don't have to worry about that. Yeah, these are just, it's just caked on there. You know, this is why it's important to take your clock and get serviced every few years, because if not, and if you get a bad repairman, then they'll just oil it and give it back and say that they did all sorts of stuff when they actually didn't, and your clock ends up looking like this. Generally, clocks need to be oiled at least every 2 to 3 years, and then serviced, which is what I'm doing, taking it apart, cleaning it, getting all the gunk off, doing any repairs, about every 5 or so years. So we'll just keep taking this gunk off of that. My guess is that the pivot holes will be pretty bad. The grease is really dark around the pivot holes, you can see, which is indicative of a lot of dirt, which will wear away at the pivot holes. So we'll find out though here soon. Once we take it out of the ultrasonic, we'll put the wheels back in and check for any wear. And I'll show you what that entails. These are looking a lot better even now, just getting all that junk off of them. Okay, and we'll do the same for the mainsprings as well before we put them in the ultrasonic. And These mainsprings do look a little set, meaning they're a little coiled still, even after all the power's off of them. That happens when a clock, or even watches, they do it too. When the mainspring's just old, it gets tired, it gets weak after being wound and unwound for so long. Generally, though, they'll still be good for the full 8 days. If not, then we'll replace them. But we don't have to worry about that right now. That's when all the repairs are done and everything's back together. Here's that super bent wheel. Not sure what happened to that. You can see how bad that is. It's terrible. But for now, we'll just get it a little cleaned up so I don't choke out my ultrasonic. All right, here's all the parts ready to go in the ultrasonic. My ultrasonic cleaner isn't very big, so I do all the wheels, all the levers and everything separate from the plates and the mainsprings. And I'll do the plates and the mainsprings separate from each other too. So this is just heating up right now. It's about 50 degrees, but it'll heat up a lot faster when these are actually in there. So we'll just take this, submerge it. Got to make sure everything's fully submerged. In fact, I might put a little bit more fluid in there before I start it. But the fluid that I use is this Zenith Formula 67 waterless cleaning fluid. Ammoniated without ammonia fumes. It actually smells pretty nice, I have to admit. But I'll put that in there, fill it up to the top, and then turn on the ultrasonic. All right, we'll see how that did. After 20 minutes in the ultrasonic, I don't know how well you can see that, it's kind of flickery, but got to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, or excuse me, Celsius. So it's pretty hot in there. We'll raise this up. You can see, oh, that is really hot. You can see how much cleaner those are now. There still is a bit of gunk on there. That's to be expected. The ultrasonic can't take everything out. Oh dear, let's try not to lose anything. Shake it off a bit. There goes the spring. Uh-oh. We'll have to look around for that. But anyway, now the next step is to dry these off. I think a lot of that gunk that's on there, you can see on the this wheel here, all that's just junk that was floating around in the ultrasonic. So anyway, we'll get these all cleaned up. We'll dry them off with a blow dryer. Make sure they're all dry to prevent rust. I figured while the ultrasonic was going that I would try to straighten out this wheel. I've got it on the vise just so that it'll lie flat and you can see where that spot is where it's bent. So what I'll just try to do first is just flatten it out. I probably won't be able to get all of it just by doing that, but I'll just use my hands, try and straighten that out as best I can before I try and do anything else with it. I think this is about as close as I'm going to be able to get it, but you can see how much better that is. It's at least somewhat flat now. There's not so much movement as that rotates around anymore. Here are the plates after the ultrasonic cleaning. You can see what a difference that made. Cleaned up all that oil, all that crap off the inside from the mainsprings. Really cleaned them up nicely, but they're still not perfect. They still have a few stains on them, and there's still a little bit of rust on the posts and on the some of the steel. But I'll clean that up. That'll be one of the last things that I do. Definitely I'll do it after I've rebushed and done all my repairs, just to keep things nice and shiny still. And while this was in the ultrasonic, I noticed this post is actually loose, but it's not wobbly at all. Like the rivet is still tight enough to keep it there, but it just spins. And I don't think I'm going to do anything about that. It's not a problem basically at all. Like that's not going to affect anything unless it gets more loose and starts wobbling, which I doubt that it will. So I'm just going to leave it like that. That way I don't have to worry about lining it up with the hole in the case while trying to rivet it. And so just leave that like it is. And earlier I said that these these movements are hard to date. I couldn't be more wrong. It's actually really easy. That's the date right there, October 1916, 10/16. So this clock is over 100 years old. 1916, that's quite old. And I noticed also none of these pivot holes have been rebushed in the past. And so what that means for me is that more likely than not, there's going to be a lot that will need rebushed. And so yeah, lots of work. We'll find out though, once the mainsprings are clean. I'll put the wheels in and check for wear in the pivot holes. I also noticed these markings carved into the rear plate. It says 28R. I'm not sure what that could be. It might be a repair mark. I know sometimes the clockmakers would scratch their initials and the date that they performed the repair onto the plates, but I'm not too sure what that is. So taking a closer look at this plate, this is the back plate here, you can see it's just a little bit bent. These two legs are just a little bit bent. I'm not sure when that happened or how that happened, but I'll straighten that out right now. Really all we need is just a good pair of pliers, something to protect the plate from the jaws of the pliers, and then we'll just straighten that out. I noticed this when putting the wheels back in to check for a few things, that they weren't going in. The posts weren't going in very well, and it just felt like the plates were a little bent, and so they were. We'll just keep going just a little bit, get those straightened out. Here's that back plate all straightened up. It almost looked like these two legs were twisted somehow, like there was some great force applied that twisted them inwards. But anyway, we got them straightened out. Should be easier to put the plates back together now.